Alright, so hello guys, and today we are going to be reacting to Mr. Nightmare. Very disturbing. Alright, you see? Alright, let's get it.
When I was 19, I worked as a camp counselor at a summer camp. The job would be to entertain and chaperone a large group of kids with a bunch of other counselors for 3 sessions for the summer. That meant 3 different groups of kids would come at different points in the summer. Each group would come for 2 weeks, which meant I was away from home for this job for a total of 6 weeks. By the time the last group came, summer was more than half over,
It's kind of
and I
scary.
was ready to finish this job and get home. At some point during the second week of the third session, and the final week of the job for the season, one of the kids in my group, named Todd, wasn't feeling good, so he wanted to go back to the cabin to go to sleep while everyone else was around the campfire. When we got back to the cabin for 10 to 12-year-old boys, I left Todd to brush up and go to bed. Upon exiting the cabin, a little girl, probably 8 years old, was waiting in front. She wasn't supposed to be in this section, especially not alone at this hour at her age. I asked her where her group was. She didn't answer me. I asked her what her name was. She said Willa. I asked her what her counselors' names were. She didn't answer. I took her hand and brought her into the front section of the cabin. Then I told her to wait there. I started to run across the camp to the other activity sections, hoping to find the girls' group. When I couldn't find them, I ran straight for the section with the girl cabins. I found one of the female counselors with a small group of 7 to 8-year-old girl campers and asked her if she had any girls named Willa in their group. The counselor was certain there was no one with that name in any of the girls' groups, actually. Next thing I did was run back to the boys' cabin where I left the girl, with plans of bringing her to the front office building. When I got back to the cabin, however, she wasn't there. I went towards the back section by the beds and asked Todd if he'd seen a girl walk in there, to which he looked confused and said no. So now in a panic, I ran outside and looked in the immediate area of the cabin for the girl, when suddenly I heard a girl's scream come from the woods. I was beyond shook. I can't even come up with better words to use for how I was feeling when I heard that scream. I wanted to run for help, but I felt like whatever danger she could be in could be time sensitive. So I ran into the woods calling Willa's name. It didn't return any calls back for a while, and I felt like I was hopelessly running into the dark woods. Until finally, after some time, and calling the name Willa constantly, there was a scream echoing through the woods, very close this time. I continued a bit further, and there she was. That little girl named Willa. She was standing straight in front of a tree looking at me, as if she were waiting. I told her to come to me in a quiet voice as I slowly approached her, but then she turned and started running. I didn't know why she was running, but I had to follow her. She was surprisingly fast, but I kept up. I saw her slow down and stop ahead, though my vision of her was
Why would
intruded
you
by a
follow
few
her?
trees,
It's a trap.
as it was the whole time
Why
I was
would you
chasing
follow
her.
her? It's a trap, my guy.
I stopped and hid behind a tree, thinking maybe I could sneak up on her and grab her if I was quiet enough. And I noticed something in the near distance.
Don't
It was some
follow
small,
her.
dim red light
Why
waving
would you
around behind
follow
some
her?
foliage.
It's
The
a
girl
trap.
then ran over to the light and apparently ducked down out of sight. I was trying to put the pieces together, just as I saw some larger figure emerge from where the girl had
That's what I'm
just
saying.
disappeared to.
It's a
figure was
trap.
crouch walking
Why
in my
would you go in
direction.
the woods and follow her? It's a
I was able
trap.
to put 2 and 2 together and assume this was some kind of trap.
Yes,
So I
that's what
turned
I'm
and
saying.
sprinted all the way back to the campgrounds and ran straight for the main office. I spoke with the camp coordinator, Jackie, told her about the suspicious activity that just took place, and advised that all camp activity should be cut short for the night. Any incident like this would be treated very seriously for the safety of the children and the well-being of the camp's reputation. Authorities had been alerted about suspicious activity on the campground. They came, I helped them with their report, and they left. By morning, everything was back to normal. The season was over before we knew it, and that was that. I have my own theories of what I witnessed in the woods that night. The most logical has to be the possibility that a man was using that little girl, maybe his daughter, as some kind of bait to lure unsuspecting victims into the woods. And what would happen next? I have no idea.
That's what I said,
glad
right?
I didn't
It's a
find
trap.
out.
Don't go in the woods, follow her.
I've been through a lot of hellish experiences in my life, but this one takes the cake. It was about 20 years ago, so I was, I believe, around 20 years old.
Alright.
This was way before cell phones and navigation garments. I was working off the books for a media company at the time, who were paying me for my photography and videography skills. I had all the top quality video equipment for the time, which held to today's standards would be like comparing a Nokia to an iPhone. I was being paid to go out into the wilderness and record hours worth of background footage of lakes, trees, etc.
In my opinion,
They would use this as
iPhone
stock
is
footage for
trash.
various
iPhone is
documentaries and
garbage.
such.
iPhone is boo-boo.
I drove about half
I
an
don't
hour
like
to
iPhone.
find a good place in rural
iPhone is
Maryland
horrible.
to do the shoot. Then I parked my car on a dirt road and hiked for a while, finding a few good shooting
so like,
locations. It was
if you
good
guys
for
view
me to
this
get
channel, I
sunset
do
and
talk a
nighttime
lot
shots as
in
well.
these reaction videos.
Different
I talk
times of day
a
created
lot,
different lighting for the videos. When I figured I had enough, I started packing up my copious amounts of equipment and threw my 2 bags over my shoulders and began walking. And walking. And walking. I started to realize I should have reached the dirt road where my car was by now. There came a time when I had to accept it. I was lost. I had absolutely no way of knowing which way was which. I'd done wilderness shoots before, and never had I run into that problem before, but usually I'd have a compass with me. Not this time.
Oh no.
I kept
Someone
walking for
stole
so
your car.
long it got to the point
Someone
that I was
stole your
letting
car.
out little cries to myself in
Yeah.
stress, wanting nothing more than to just find
Somebody
my
stole
car
your
and
car.
go home, feeling absolutely helpless. Eventually, after many hours, I came across a small building. It was an old house that appeared to be abandoned in the middle of the woods, indicated by the vines crawling up the sides of the home, plus the broken glass.
Abandoned building.
Continuing
It's
to walk
abandoned.
around in the woods in the night was the last thing I wanted to do, and seeking refuge for the night made more sense.
Why would you
I
go in the
walked up
house?
wooden
The house
stairs
is
to the front
abandoned.
door, which seemed to have already been broken in. All I had to do was push it with a bit of force, and I was inside. It was next to pitch black in there, and every step I took, I felt like I was
The
stepping
house
on
is
rubble or
abandoned,
trash.
Why would you go
I
in
did,
there?
however, manage to find the bedroom of the house, which still had a bed in it, mind you, probably a filthy bed at that. But it
Don't
beat
go
sleeping in the
bed.
woods or
It's
hiking
a
around
trap.
any longer in the
Someone's
dark.
gonna kill. Oh.
I shut the door and plopped my stuff on the floor and arranged one of my bags to act as a cushion
This
between
dude
me and the
actually
actual
tried
bed itself.
to stay the night at this
Yeah,
house.
I tried my best
Okay,
to
so like,
fall
I mean,
asleep
I
in this
would too,
dark,
but it's abandoned,
and
right?
foreign location
I
in the
wouldn't stay
middle
there.
of the
It's
woods.
abandoned.
It was surreal, and it was scary.
Then
The window in the
don't
room
go
was broken,
in
so I could
there.
hear the wind and
Simple
bugs
as that.
outside.
Don't go in there.
And over
If it's
that,
scary.
there was the slightest,
Oh
and I
my
mean
God.
slightest little creak from a few feet away from the bed across this tiny bedroom. I looked up, and even though it was dark, I could vaguely see a closet door in the corner. It was moving.
That's creepy. That's creepy.
It had to be the draft. It had to be. I was letting my paranoia get the better of me in this freakish
That's not
situation.
paranormal.
Then,
Paranoid.
with the sound of the bugs and wind,
My
I
English
heard
isn't
something
good
from
today.
inside the room now. It was a gurgling type sound, like a throat noise. I looked at the closet again. Something was coming out from the darkness of the closet.
Oh.
I got up to grab my stuff off the ground. Within arm's reach now, I was staring at someone else in this room in this abandoned house in the middle of the forest. Here's my description of what I saw in the brief moments I was staring at this person. I saw a man wearing a woman's wig with some kind of makeup on his face. As for what he was wearing, I didn't really notice that, but I think it was something dark since I couldn't really see it. I grabbed my bags and started saying I'm sorry as I ran out of the house.
Run.
I didn't know if this was their house or not at the time, but either way, I didn't want any trouble. As I ran away from the house, I heard footsteps tailing behind me at first.
Run up.
I think this is when the adrenaline really kicked in. I suddenly had this insane amount of energy to keep running until I felt I had escaped.
Yes.
And even after
Listen
that,
to
I
me.
kept
Don't
running,
turn around.
hopping
Don't
over
look
logs
back.
and rocks and
Run.
twigs, trying to find a road, any road, with the logic that there's only so much forest left in the state, I'd have to run into a road eventually. And finally, I did.
That's creepy.
I walked down the road, and within 10 minutes, a car passed, and I hitchhiked my way back to my truck. On my way home, I had time to reflect. That house was absolutely abandoned.
That's what I'm
The
saying.
door and all the
That
windows
was
were
abandoned.
smashed open. There was trash all over the place. I can't use logic to explain it, because it's not explainable. I am grateful I was unharmed, though.
Alright guys, so like, I am watching the video off my PlayStation 4.
My apartment complex sits in a pretty safe neighborhood, so I guess I'm naturally less on guard as far as break-ins and whatever. There was this one night I'd gotten home late from a bar with friends, and though I wasn't very drunk anymore, I was definitely still tipsy. To give a little context on my apartment layout, it's on the ground level and has 2 doors, a front and back. As I entered, I was in the living room, greeted by my dog Chester.
Oh yeah.
Then I passed the living room to walk down a tiny hallway to my room. Chester followed, though he was acting a little weird. I jumped right into bed. I was exhausted. I fell asleep in minutes, and the next thing I remember is waking up to growling. I looked at Chester, who was standing up on my bed, looking at the far corner of the room. I sat
Alright,
up
so
to see what he
guys,
was
like,
looking at.
I'm trying to get
It was
like
too dark.
a good thumbnail.
I had to flip
Hey,
on
for
the
this
lamp.
reaction video, so
That's
like
when I
that's why
noticed
it's
that he was
like
looking at the
you
closet
might see
door,
my face,
which was
so, like,
cracked
doing
open
this.
just barely.
It's for the
Right
thumbnail.
away, I felt a pain in my stomach as I feared the worst. I lightly tapped him to get him to shut up for a second, and he looked at me and went silent. I got out from the bed as he watched me tiptoe closer to the closet. If someone was in there, I had to be ready to defend myself.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
instead of opening that door right then and there,
The
I
uppercut.
hurried to the kitchen to get a knife. Chester followed
Yeah,
me.
no, grab a gun
When I got back into my
and
room, I don't know where it came from. I had a huge bout of confidence overcome me, and I rushed
Grab
open the
that
closet
gun.
door fully. I was shocked, but also relieved
yeah,
to see no
grab
one
that gun.
inside.
Grab that gun.
I called
Right,
Chester
right,
an
right.
idiot as I went back to the kitchen to put the knife away. When I got back into the room, I saw Chester looking under my bed, growling again. I bent down to take a look, and there was a man hiding under my bed. We made eye contact for a second, and then I grabbed Chester and ran outside to knock on the neighboring apartment's door. My neighbor opened in his pajamas, and I begged him to let me in after explaining that someone was in my apartment. He let me in immediately and let me use his phone to call the police. The intruder wasn't in the apartment anymore by the time the police came and searched the place. If it weren't for my tiny little chihuahua who couldn't harm a fly, I may not have come out of this in one piece.
Alright guys, so that wraps up the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe. Peace out.